are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Eagles fans, welcome back into another edition of Locked On Eagles. Louie DiBiase joining you as always, but I'm really pleased to be joined by my next two guests, two really good friends from Philadelphia, content contributors for fourthandjawn.com. It's Gayle Saunders and Chris Mallee here to talk some Eagles draft what-ifs with me, boys. It's good to see you again and talk. Haven't done it since the Senior Bowl in February.
Yeah, man, it's nice to see you again. The last time we were living our dreams down there in Mobile,
Dude,
right?
Tell me about it. I mean, that was some of the coolest experience we've had. Even like off the field, like going to what was the bars? I can't even. Veets. Going to draft room. We were eating some crab, some alligator. We had a good old time out there. So what I want to get into with you guys today is something that I did during the pandemic 2 years ago. You know, it was, I think, around like May. So I was getting ready for the dead zone, right after the draft, when there's not a lot going on, in between the draft, OTAs, and training camp. You know, you start to come up with content, especially then. There wasn't really much to do considering the pandemic. So I came up with a series, Eagles What Ifs, kind of going through Eagles history and saying, you know, how things could have been different. Like, for instance, if Carson Wentz didn't tear his ACL against the Rams in 2017, you know, if they drafted, you know, if things went a certain way in drafts. And that's what I want to get into today with the draft on Thursday next week. Kind of taking a trip down memory lane and taking a look at, you know, some things, how different it could have been if just one pick went differently, right? I think there's so many instances like this. And I think like a big one is one we bring up all the time is 2015. Like, what happens if Chip Kelly trades up for Marcus Mariota with the Tennessee Titans, that second overall pick? Like, don't you guys feel like that's one of the biggest? You think about how different that could have been? Because I feel like if Chip Kelly gets Mariota, he's not fired after 2015. No Doug Peterson, no Carson Wentz, no Nick Foles again. Like, guys, I don't know if that team wins the Super Bowl.
Or even gets to one.
Right. I mean, how good is the Mariota Chip Kelly Eagles? And that's without Deshaun Jackson at that point and Jeremy Maclin. Like, I don't think that team, I don't know what happens.
I mean, you'd move a lot of pieces, and that would have made a huge wave. I mean, like, it could have it could have been flashy for a quick second because Mariota would have been running that offense pretty tight, you know, and precise. But at the end of the day, man, I feel like things are supposed to happen how they're supposed to happen. Like, imagine if Fletcher Cox was in the middle of this defensive last team.
The Chiefs took Dontari Poe, 4 spots ahead of him? The Memphis defensive tackle, like that's a huge what if. I mean, the Chiefs could have had Fletcher Cox, and that changes, I think, everything. So I think about Mariota a lot because, you know, what's funny about that? The Titans, some people speculated maybe they would want to stick with Zach Mettenberger. And, you know, do you guys remember what the trade offer was? Can you tell me just like a few players that were in that deal, at least the hypothetical deal Chip offered Tennessee?
It was Fletch. It was who else was it? It was a linebacker?
Kendricks? Yeah. They had their choice of Mark Sanchez or Sam Bradford. I think it was multiple first-round picks, and I think Brandon Boykin was involved in that deal. And, you know, the funniest part was I think Tennessee said no, so they went to Tampa Bay at number 1. But it gets me to thinking, too, about, like, 2016, how Howie Roseman jumped up the board twice. You know, they had to get lucky that the Cleveland Browns didn't think Carson Wentz would become a top 20 quarterback. You know, things can just change that quick. And if a team recognizes a quarterback is the guy, like if Detroit recognizes Malik Willis is the guy at 2 this year, there's nothing you can do about it.
You trying to speak something into existence here?
Yeah, maybe I am just a little bit.
It's a little high now. Are we feeling that?
Yeah.
I mean, they've considered it. I don't think they're going to, but they definitely have talked about taking Malik at 2. But at the same time, people think that Malik might even fall to like 7 to 10 range, but it's weird right now because Pittsburgh's been talking a lot about moving up to get Pickett at 7 or 8 too. There's a lot of movement right now. Jaguars are shopping number 1 pick right now too. Like it's crazy. There's like a lot of movement going on.
I thought about that too with this brings me back to 2016 because the Eagles again had to get lucky. They're a 7-win team at that point. They're picking at, I don't even, what spot did they have in 2016 before they moved up to 8 with, it was 12,
We were
right?
12 to 8 to 2. Yeah.
Like the rarity of getting lucky that you get to move up from 12 to 8 and Miami will take on the Kiko Alonso contract and Byron Maxwell.
Yeah, that was love.
Like they're like, we'll take those on and you can move up 4 spots. Miami has made 2 bad trades with the Eagles, by the way, when you look at it since 2016, last year's trade too. Like we'll take Jalen Waddle instead of a first-round pick next year and Devontae Smith. But I don't know.
What about the second round pick that we got for what's his name? Quarterback.
For
back in the day.
Kevin Cobb?
Not Kevin Cobb.
AJ Feely.
AJ Feely.
Yeah, talk about some trades that Howie Roseman, has gotten some steals for quarterbacks because they got a second-round pick for Kevin Cobb and Dominic Rodgers. That's another what-if, by the way, because Joe Banner do you guys ever hear the story that apparently before the lockout, there was a deal where the Cardinals were just going to give the Eagles a 7th overall pick and it would have been Patrick Peterson, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that could have changed everything. I don't think you're going to sign Nnamdi Asomugha at that point either.
That's amazing, man. Like that would have changed a lot of things. So the lockout prevented that one, correct?
Yeah, I think the deal was that they couldn't make any moves during the lockout. So the trade kind of fell through, ended up being DRC and a second-round pick afterwards. So Patrick Peterson, it would be funny too. Like I'm just a very nostalgic Eagles fan, so it would be funny if it all came full circle. Like I was kind of even rooting for Mariota to come back as a backup a little bit. Because I will say back to that real quick, like of all Chip Kelly's downfalls, and there were a lot of them, like, Gayle, you mentioned, he would have tailored that offense to what Mariota did at Oregon with Chip. And, he would have been forced into that exotic smash mouth Mike Mularkey Titans offense. So
hey, we had Jeff Mail for a little bit. Remember him?
That's right. Yeah. And do you remember when they brought on Dennis Dixon too, as Chip's first move in 2013? And there was some talk he might compete for the starting job.
One of my high school teammates is actually best friends with Chip Kelly.
Really?
They was at his wedding. They coached together at New Hampshire. His name's Sean Devine.
Yeah.
He was coaching with Delaware for a little bit, and he was supposed to coach with Chip Kelly when he came down here. I don't know what fell through. I was like, I got my in with the Eagles. Like I got my in now, but it never happened. But
neither did him getting a quarterback, man. I think that was, of all things, like him not getting a quarterback, and especially one with mobility outside of a few Vic games. I think that was a huge, part of Chip Kelly's offense, and to never have that, it was weird how he almost switched up his quarterback philosophy in the NFL compared to college.
Well, just remember back when they had this, if you think back at it, how the hell did we get Sam Bradford, Tim Tebow, and Mark Sanchez
all on the same team?
And Matt Barkley was here too at that time, right?
Yeah, so 4 not historically good quarterbacks, but some of the best.
Yeah, in college, yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into too, your guys' what ifs, because the Mariota one, I don't want to say it bothers me because again, you don't win a Super Bowl if they draft Mariota that year. It just doesn't happen. And I don't know if Marcus falls off like he did in Tennessee and Philadelphia. Although, again, it would have been tough. He didn't have a lot of weapons. And at the time, you're thinking maybe Frank Gore comes in. He's his running back, and that's the plan in the backfield. Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Shady Rays. You can get the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price with Shady Rays. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay absolutely nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusive for our Locked On Eagles listeners, head over to ShadyRays.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's promo code LOCKEDON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. And guys, today's show is also sponsored by the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Bet Online. Get all your NFL draft bets in only 5 days until the 2022 NFL Draft. Bet on what the Eagles are going to do, how many positions go in the first round. Who goes where? It's all available at BetOnline, as well as the NBA playoffs. You've got the MLB season right now, the push for the playoffs in the NHL as well. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and so much more. Head over to their website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You know, there are certain ones that do bother me. Like, what are the what ifs that you think about the most, that maybe you were the most devastated at the time, that it didn't happen, and you'd love to be in like a, the Marvel multiverse is kind of getting me thinking about this now. Like, you would just love to see how that would have played out.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough because all the ones prior to the Super Bowl, it's one of those things where, like, okay, things happen for a reason.
That's a good point. Yeah, like Gayle
since
said.
Then, I know that Gayle and I were literally in the studio in New Jersey. This is like the first podcast I ever did, and him and I are talking outside the room before we got in the booth, and we're talking about prospects, and I just remember, like, we're like, dude, like, Deebo Samuel looks really good.
The wide receiver what ifs, man, there's a lot of them.
Well, that was like the thing, because I was gonna say before the Super Bowl, like, Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Adams all went right after Jordan Matthews, and we took Marcus Smith too. And that's
a good one, Chris.
And that's how we feel. And that's how we feel with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Andre Dillard. It's the same thing. And we could have had Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, or DK Metcalf. And it's one of those things where it's just like
painful.
It's not even just the last decade. It's forever for the Eagles. They have not been able to get a first-round wide receiver. And that's why it's crazy, because now we have Devontae Smith. And now, like, we're waiting for, like, Hurts to unlock more of his game to help unlock more of Dallas Goedert and utilize Devontae Smith to the full ability. And that's why it's so frustrating, because, like, we finally have this wide receiver in Devontae Smith.
Just took 7 tries, yeah.
Exactly. And Hurts can't get him the ball as much as we'd like him to. But you still see the chemistry, though. Like, it's really interesting to see how Devontae Smith, even with the deficiencies of him coming on as a rookie and Jalen Hurts coming on as a second-year passer, and they still almost had a 1,000-yard season. And the talent's there with Devontae Smith. We took Nelson Aguilar instead of Tyler Lockett. And then probably the most controversial one was, like, I think the biggest one, and we have to see how things turn out, is if we didn't take Jalen Hurts. That's probably one of the biggest ones that we're going to end up talking about 10 years and on after
I think about it every day.
Wraps up. Because, like, does Carson Wentz spiral out like he did? Like, do we end up getting Jeremy Chin, A.J. Dillon, or Logan
any of them,
Wilson
man?
who's
Willie Gay Jr.
on Cincinnati? Like, yeah. So it's interesting, but the one that sticks with me is, like, Gayle and I were hell bent on Deebo Samuel, and I know Gayle loves Simmons on Tennessee, who's been phenomenal.
I was gonna mention that one.
Yeah, like those are the ones. Like, I just remember, like, it was literally a couple years ago. Like, Gayle and I were just getting on a show to do a show like this, and we're like, man, Deebo Samuel, like, that's the guy that we got to get. And then,
yeah, I mean, we were just checking out his game. We were just like, his game was so versatile back then. And we were talking about he's a wide receiver, running back, all in the mix, and you get 2-for-1 kind of deal. But when you mentioned Jeffrey Simmons, I was going to mention that, like, if you hit on a Jeffrey Simmons, you don't have to, like, get a Javon Hargraves. You know what I mean? You talk about these moves that like
reactive instead of, like, proactive.
Like, if you hit on I'm not, some of the corners that we drafted, like, do you even have to go and get a Darius Slay?
Right. Or if you draft Jimmy Smith all the way back in 2011 instead of Danny Watkins, you don't have to pay Nnamdi Asomugha and trade for Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I mean, there's a million of those. You hit it perfectly, like, reactive moves. Even Devontae Smith, Chris. Yeah, like, I hate the take, you can't take a receiver again for the 3rd year in a row in the first round, 4th year in a row in the first 2 rounds. It's like, yeah, you wish you didn't have to for a 4th time to clean up the mess you already made.
Right, man.
Jaw's a tight end now, which I hate, and I just give up. Stop trying to make anything out of that pick, Howie. And the Reagor pick, like those moves were failures. You don't not make a move now to save face because you're admitting your faults in those two picks. So
exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Chris, you got me thinking like the receiver what ifs impact directly the quarterback what if too, because you've talked about what if they don't draft Jalen Hurts, but like even before that, if they take DK Metcalf in 2019 or Terry McLaurin, or if they take Justin Jefferson over Jalen Reagor, even if they take Jalen Hurts in the second round, if 2020 Wentz is Justin Jefferson, I don't know if he still spirals out of control. If they trade up for CeeDee Lamb, they give up that second round pick that they took Hurts with. The Lamb one bothers me the most because that one directly would have resulted in Hurts not being on the team. And although that wasn't the thing that broke Carson Wentz, it was the final straw.
Was Atlanta was in control of that pick, but they wanted the second, correct?
So they wanted the 2 apparently. So at first everybody thought, no, they wanted AJ Terrell from Clemson. Like they weren't going to budge from that pick. They wanted the corner. The report was a couple days later that it would have took the 2 and the Eagles didn't want to give it up. And then I'm thinking you didn't want to give it up to take a backup quarterback. Like if they would have took Jeremy Chin there, I'd been like, okay, makes sense. You get Reagor and Chin instead of Lamb, that 2-for-1 trade-off is good, but to take a backup, Chris, that one bothers me the most. I'm glad you mentioned that one.
Yeah, Go, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's just a very complex situation. Like, obviously, we don't know because the book's so early on Jalen, but at the same time, like, it's such a complex situation because all that situation leads to not getting certain players, like all pro players, and then casting out a quarterback. Obviously, he had his hand in the situation too, and the largest dead cap hit ever. So that's why you see all the maneuvering and everything. So yeah, I agree, Lou. Like it is a huge what if. It's one of the biggest what ifs for the Eagles.
Yeah, because it affected. I mean, right now it feels like it threw you right back in quarterback purgatory, and hopefully you find a way out of that through Hurts taking another step, or you find your quarterback next year in 2023. Because I don't think they're taking one next week. Although with the Eagles, you never know, i.e., 2020. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest one because it threw you back into this unknown at the position. And although Carson Wentz in 2019 wasn't what he was in 2017, like to go from what he was in 2019 to 2020 is such a substantial drop off. This episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by a protein bar that tastes pretty much just like a candy bar. It's Built Bar, covered in 100% chocolate. It's soft and easy to chew. It's all of the flavor and none of the guilt of your sweet tooth. Whatever that craving is, it could be a Hershey's bar, Reese's cup, the cookies and cream Hershey's is my go-to, with white chocolate being a favorite of mine. Replace it with Built Bar. Again, all of the flavor, none of the guilt, only 130 calories in most bars, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to one of those candy bars, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Plus the flavors. It's one for every taste bud. You've got mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, you've got white chocolate, cookies and cream, which again replaces, to me, the Hershey's cookies and cream bar. I'm a white chocolate, orange chocolate guy. I have very specific taste, but Built Bar has me covered. Plus, they have now the first ever protein-infused marshmallow bars with cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie flavors. Head over to Built.com today. I'll get you 15% off when you use our promo code. It's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, to get 15% off your order. Trust me, I've never really been a protein bar guy growing up. Built Bars have changed the game for me and everybody else. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So yeah, I think the receiver what ifs are crazy. I mean, look, all teams could do this, and there's a million different scenarios. The draft just goes completely haywire every year, so unpredictably so, and it's really hard to be consistent in it. But at the same time, I don't know, guys, it just feels like the Eagles, especially since like the Super Bowl, there's just a ton of these that, like you said, Chris, like all pro players were so close. And it's not just that like they were right by your pick, but you took the same position.
Yeah. My pick, that it's one of those that bother me because it's like, in a historic running back draft in 2017, the Eagles draft Donald Pumphrey. And again, I was rooting for the guy in the terms of, I'm black and Filipino. He's black and Filipino. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
Like I actually met him at one of the Eagles practices. I'm like, yo, bro.
Wasn't he like 5'7"?
5'9". So I'm like, I'm rooting for the kid, but and I was so angry, dude. I was so angry when we drafted him because we had Jamal Williams.
Oh yeah.
We had Marlon Mack. We had Aaron Jones. I mean, Chris Carson went as well. I mean,
Alvin
just
Kamara
imagine
as a pick a couple rounds later too.
I mean, imagine if you hit on any of those guys. Like, are we even talking about Miles Sanders?
No, definitely not. What if Minnesota in 2017 doesn't move 2 spots in front of you in the first round? With the Bengals, the Eagles take Dalvin Cook there. They weren't going to take Sidney Jones. I mean, that could have changed. Again, you win and you brought this up earlier. Like, it's harder to say you wish things went differently then because you signed LeGarrette Blount in June. He becomes a key part of the Super Bowl. But, at the time, those were extremely frustrating. And by the way, Gayle, Donnell Pumphrey, the epitome of the Eagles' philosophy at the time of college production over anything. I mean, the kid had like almost 3,000 yards from scrimmage at San Diego State that year.
Broke Marshall Faulk's record.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's all they cared about. Derek Barnett that year too. Broke Reggie White's record.
But the other thing, he didn't play a game, dude.
Yeah.
Never played it. And the other draft pick, Jaquan Jarrett out of Temple. Safety.
That was the last time they took a safety in the first 2 rounds.
That's what I'm saying.
How he's been starred for 11 years.
Played 12 games and never played a game for the Eagles after that.
Can you, I don't know if you guys would know this, and this is off topic, but do you remember the bridge safety they started in front of Jarrett for a few games that year in 2011? When you hear the name, you'll probably go nuts. But
was it Sean Constantine?
No, but that's a good one too.
Dude,
it's not Macho.
Conversation.
It's not Macho Harris.
No, and it's not a Shimago Atagwe, but he was one of the
I was about to say that one next.
Jared Page.
Oh yeah, he wore. Guess what number he wore? Number 41, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yep.
I don't know why I remember that.
We had this conversation when we were down in Mobile and we were like half asleep the one night because
this was the incredible thing. We were having like conversations like this at the bar with Ronnie Brown sitting like right at the bar next to us, part of that dream team. Oh man, good times. But guys, the last one I've got for you too. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie brought this up in his press conference a couple weeks ago. What if the Eagles draft Russell Wilson? I mean, because that, to me, Andy Reid's not fired. Like, say what you will about the end of Andy Reid and the dream team and stuff, but Michael Vick not staying healthy is the main reason that team collapsed down the stretch those final 2 years. Like, even in 2011, the dream team year, they went 4-0 in December, nearly actually made the playoffs. If he gets Russell Wilson, that sustained success continues after McNabb, but you don't draft Foles. So he never comes back in 2017, right? There's, again, no Doug and there's no Carson. So does Russell Wilson and Andy Reid I bet you there's a lot more sustained success and maybe they're both still on the Eagles to this day. But again, do you trade the Super Bowl for that? Wasn't that the perfect championship? But would you trade that for, and then everything that's followed for what Reid and Mahomes are with Reid and Wilson?
Because we will go back to this conversation. Like you are supposed to be where you're supposed to be, and my birthday was on the Super Bowl.
Fate, I can tell.
My birthday was on the Super Bowl day.
Yeah, I mean, so it was like the perfect day for you.
What are the chances? Like, I don't think I would have traded that. Like, if it was on another day, but it was on my birthday, so that I couldn't trade in that scenario. But I do think if Russell Wilson was here, I think we would probably won a Super Bowl earlier.
I agree. That's why I would probably say sign me up, just because Russell Wilson with Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin, LaShawn McCoy, you can focus on the defense at that point. You got a guy in a second round. If Lurie said he wishes they would have took him in the second round, you take him on that second round contract. Yeah, man, that's one of the big ones because it's hard. You took Foles right after and he wins you a championship at some point, and that was so perfect. But I mean, with Andy Reid, again, it was, if Michael Vick doesn't get hurt, I know there was so much that happened those final 2 years, but he instantly bounced back the minute he found stability again in Kansas City at that position. I mean, for everything, Chip Kelly, Andy Reid, all of these, there were so many things that went into it, but quarterback is the thing that makes you wonder what if for so many of these scenarios.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's still a big thing because we all know the reports, and it's not rumors, it's truth. Like, the Eagles have been trying to get a quarterback the entire offseason, and now and it was a absolute value trade too with New Orleans, but now they have more capital for next year, which is a great quarterback class compared to this year. Even though I know that all three of us do like Malik Willis, it's one of those things where it seems more unlikely that they're going to draft Malik because they moved out. Sure. They moved out of the spot. That being said, if he falls to a certain spot, I've heard that they still might be interested depending on the price of it all. But and I even heard that if Matt Corral falls to the back end of the first, they might move up from the second to get him. But that's what's crazy, though. Like, they are nonstop trying to get a quarterback. And Jalen knows it, too, because they tried to get Russ. They tried to get Deshaun. I think they tried to
trade up for Zach Wilson last year, too.
They called the Packers about Jordan Love, too. So that's how desperate in their own mind they are to replace Hurts, which is crazy that's how far they're resorting to. They've called for Baker. They've called for everyone. It's that weird, like, how much they want to replace him. But in the public eye, like, they're like, oh, yeah, we love Jalen. Because they do love Jalen. I mean, he's a great player. He is a hard worker. He's a face of a franchise type of guy, and he works really hard. But it's just crazy because they're doing so much homework and work on the back end to replace him. Because, dude, Deshaun Watson, like, that was a big thing. Like, his report was like, oh, yeah, like, I would have came there, but he's friends with Jalen. He's like, I didn't want to put him out of the job and, like, be in the situation, which is crazy because that's how far the conversations got.
I think it's just important that even regardless of, like I always go back to the situation where Bill Walsh brings in a Steve Young when he has a Joe Montana. Like, at the end of the day, a football team is about competition and building the best team you can and pushing players to be the best player they can be. So if if you feel uncomfortable about the competition that they're trying to bring here, like, it's part of the game. Like, and it's a part where you have to, like, take your game to the next level. So if he feels offended by them doing so, I hope so. Like, the whole Jordan mentality, like, and that's where you get offended and take your game to the next level. Like, you don't sit back.
Jalen Hurts seems like the kind of guy that'll find, like MJ and Kobe. Like, even if they didn't do that, Hurts is gonna find things like that.
That's what you do. You all right, yeah, you don't blame
the
me.
Littlest thing.
Okay. What is the Jordan meme where he's like?
Yeah, it was because he was responding to Gary Payton, right?
I think so. I can't think of the Jordan meme though.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I mean, I hope, guys, that on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday next week there aren't more of these scenarios created. I think 2021 last year, there's not. I mean, I don't have any what ifs. Do you guys? I mean, I thought at first, like, when they took Landon Dickerson over Asante Samuel Jr. and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and the way those two started off the year, I'm like, oh, this might be one of them. But I think, the last year we don't have any, and hopefully this year, maybe it'll be what if for the better. Like, because real quick, that happened too. There were a couple times, like you mentioned Fletcher Cox and Dontari Poe, like 2013, if the Miami Dolphins don't trade up in front of Chip Kelly at 3 for Deion Jordan, is Chip Kelly not taking Deion Jordan over Lane Johnson? I mean, the Oregon edge rusher, I don't know. So let's hope that maybe it's for the better what ifs next week, but if not, hopefully they just kill this class. Thanks so much, guys, for checking out Locked On Eagles today. Eagles draft what ifs with my boys from 4th and Jawn, Gayle Saunders and Chris Mallee. Guys, give our listeners a shout out where they can find you on Twitter, your podcast, and all your written content.
You can find me at Eagle Sessions. You can find a lot of our content at 4thandjawn.com. You can look for us on socials at 4th and Jawn.
And Chris, how do they hit you up on Twitter?
Yeah, so it is Mallee_Chris_24. That's the Twitter at. I have Instagram as well. It's just my name, Chris Mallee, and I have a scouting page too. And then content over at 4th and Jawn. Gayle and I do player interviews. We just had Khalil Shakur on. That was an awesome interview. We had Chad Muma from Wyoming on earlier as well. And if you guys ever have any questions, all three of us are good people to reach out to on the timeline or the DMs, and always try to answer any questions as fast as we can. Louie, appreciate you having us on.
Appreciate it, boys. Thanks.